if you're going there for the Beatles and then also you're staying at George Harrison's house and you know that the Beatles used to rehearse there, it's hard to put that in words for people. And so people like can't put it in words. Many people have gone there and, they cry, and they can't handle it.
From winding back roads to weathered front porches, this is Grounded in Granite, a podcast about the people and places rooted in the Granite State. I'm Jason Schreiber. I've called this state home my whole life, and for more than 30 years as a journalist, I've had the privilege of telling the quiet, powerful stories that live in our small towns and everyday lives, from the seacoast to the Great North Woods. And if there's one thing I've learned over the years, it's this. In New Hampshire, every person and every place has a story to tell. Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of Grounded in Granite. I have headed to the seacoast. I'm actually in Hampton, New Hampshire, at the home of Ken Lambert. So Ken has an interesting story. For anyone who's a member of Beatlemaniac, I think you're going to love today's episode. Or even if you're not a Beatles fan, I think it's pretty cool. So Ken actually owns the childhood home of what the Beatles' lead guitarist, George Harrison. It's in Liverpool, England. He's in Hampton, but he owns this home, turned it into an Airbnb. So it's sort of this Beatles-themed Airbnb, and he's got Beatle fans coming from around the world to stay at his Airbnb. So it's pretty cool. And he also just recently co-authored an autobiography for legendary guitarist Alvin Taylor, drummer. Sorry. Right. And that's something he can also get into as well, and has a Beatles connection and how he met Alvin. And so a lot to unpack, but pretty cool to have this New Hampshire connection to these, famous musicians. So Ken, if you can kind of start by sort of giving some of the history of how you came to get Harrison's childhood home, because it's just not a typical purchase that someone in New Hampshire would make across the big pond. So kind of explain how that happened, and we'll kind of go from there.
Yes. So there's always a beginning to everything. So
right.
Back almost exactly 4 years ago now. Is it 4 years or 3? 4 years ago.
Okay.
4 years ago, George Harrison's house in Liverpool, the house that he grew up in, and the house that was a big rehearsal space for George and John Lennon and Paul McCartney. So it was a Beatles rehearsal space. It was one of their more common rehearsal spaces. Yeah. And there's a story behind that. But anyways, this goes way back to like 1958, when George joined the band with John and Paul.
Okay.
And that the band was called the Quarrymen before it was called the Beatles, and the Beatlemaniacs will know that. Okay. But anyway, so it was called the Quarrymen. So anyways, that's a little trivia.
Yeah.
But back about 4 years ago, I didn't even know about any of this. Yeah. And some of my good friends, that they know I'm a George Harrison maniac, or a George Harrison mega fan, if you will. And I do love the Beatles, and the Beatles is part of all that. But George is my guy, I guess, my favorite. So so they knew all that growing up and whatever. And so they started texting me news articles from CNN, from BBC, from all these places saying, "Hey Ken, George Harrison's house is going up for public auction. Okay. You got to put a bid on it." Yeah. And I was like, "Oh, that's funny, whatever, that's not going to happen." and so I just disregarded it. And then they kind of egged me on a little bit, but I mean, they're very good friends. Yeah. But so then after a couple of weeks, I looked into it, and I was like, I went on the website and I'm like, all right, kind of checked out the house. But anyways, so a day before the auction, this is a public auction, that it was auctioned in person and by phone and online. Like you could do an online bid, which is what I did, because I was sitting in Massachusetts at that time when I made the bid. But anyways, a day before, I had to decide I was going to bid on it. Yeah. And I had to go do all this like pre-qualification stuff with the auction house. Anyways, I ended up putting a bid on it, and I was a high bid.
Wow. So then you hadn't seen this place.
Nope.
So
I've never been to England in my life.
Really?
Yeah.
So what happened after you ended up being the highest bidder? Did you go out and see what the heck you just bought?
Well, then I had I didn't go out there until the closing. So I
Okay.
did not go out there to like check it out. It
Yeah.
was sort of too
Okay.
late at that point.
Yeah.
Like an auction is a legal contract.
Yeah.
Once that is done,
Yeah.
it's done.
Yeah.
There's no backing out of it. So even if I go there and it's a disaster, I can't
Right.
do anything about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and it's expensive to fly out there and all the stuff.
Yeah.
So I ended up just waiting until the closing. And I went out there like a day before the closing just to kind of check it out a little bit. But again, it was irrelevant. It was a formality. And then, with the lawyers and all that
Yeah.
stuff, got the keys. And then I'm like sitting
This
there
is
in George Harrison's house.
like what?
And I'm like, and then, again, in that
It's
like month or two in the interim, I had to figure out like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
I'm not like a super wealthy guy, and I had to like figure out how am I going to make it into what I want to make it into.
Did you have a vision of exactly what you were going to do with this when you bought it? Did you think?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah. Once after I was the winning bidder, I put a lot of thought into what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And so, see, John Lennon's house in Liverpool and Paul McCartney's house, they're owned by the National Trust, which is it's the biggest national charity in England. And they own it and they do tours out of it, but you can't stay overnight there. And there's differences obviously, but it's more of like a museum that they'll bring tour groups in a few times a day. So anyway, so there's interest obviously in so many people go to Liverpool every year for the Beatles. I mean, it's a huge draw, like tour, marketing wise and all that. So I'm like, but George never had anything. And so being a George guy, I was always kind of like slighted by like, well, why doesn't George get to, have anything? And so that was sort of part of the appeal of it is let's open it up to fans. And, it doesn't have to be crazy George fans. I mean, just Beatle fans in general. And the fact that you can stay overnight there for, 2 nights, 3 nights, whatever, and live there for a few days is really a cool thing. And that's one of the things I'm most proud of.
Crazy. Yeah. Yeah. So you got this place. When did you actually get it advertised on Airbnb?
Yeah.
Start renting it out?
It's been live for about 3.5 years. It's been live. So I worked quickly to get it all staged, and it was totally empty. I had to get furniture. I had to you've seen some pictures. And again, anyone can go on Airbnb to go on to just look for George Harrison Liverpool Home, but also on Facebook, George Harrison Liverpool Home. We have our own page, but anyways, you'll see all kinds of photos. And so the wallpaper in the living room, actually my wife, Danielle, she found that wallpaper that would match the old wallpaper. Because it's been renovated a fair amount in the years since the George house.
Yeah, right.
So my goal was in some of the rooms to recreate like a 1958, 1960 vibe of when George lived there. And so there's some old pictures that I was able to see the wallpaper. And then we looked, Danielle and I, very hard to find that wallpaper. And we did. And
That's
I got,
amazing.
I had wallpaper put on it. So when you step in to the house and look to the right, it looks like, and the furniture and the stuff I have on the walls, the old pictures and photographs, it looks like you're just stepping into it and you can kind of feel like John Lennon sitting there and then them playing like a Chuck Berry song or whatever.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. Are there a lot of original parts to the place?
The house?
I mean,
there are some, but it's been renovated, over the years a bit. Certainly, we have an original kitchen hutch is there, which is very cool. So that's neat. So that's, you're opening those drawers, George went in there to get a pot, to make, make something, make some soup or whatever. The tub is original.
Really?
So George Harrison took baths in that tub. So it's kind of weird.
You can take a bath
in George Harrison's tub.
Which...
Yeah. Right. And so some people really like that.
Yeah.
And more of the women like that. But anyways, it's, so when I bought the house, it didn't have a shower.
Yeah.
So it's just a tub. So you can only take baths. So when I had to, because it's an Airbnb, I had to add a shower, a shower setup, whatever. Yeah. But the bathroom sink is original. There's an outdoor toilet that is original. The original toilet. So John Lennon used that toilet, which is another weird, thing, and Paul McCartney and George. So that's kind of crazy.
So that's exciting.
It is exciting.
The toilet that John Lennon used.
It is. People we get very excited about that. And there's a few other things. Some of the trim is original. Some of the doors are original, the interior doors, some of them. So there's a few things, but a lot of it has been renovated.
Yeah.
But then in that living room, I kind of retro recreated the old vibe.
Okay. And how many owners has it passed through since he owned it? It's only been a
couple,
right?
So after George left, there was one owner that owned it for over 40 years.
Okay.
A family.
Yeah.
Then they sold it and then someone had it for like 6 or 7 years, and then I bought it.
Oh,
So really not much, really,
yeah, yeah. Okay.
but it was never open before I did
So this is the
this.
first time
This is the
as
first
people can
time
come
people
and
can come,
have that
have that
experience.
experience.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
we also
Wow.
do some, we do some special tours once in a while, some special events. I was just out there about a month and a half ago
Mm.
doing a special, we did a concert in the back garden
Oh, did you?
of George's old
Oh,
house,
neat.
a Beatles
Yeah.
tribute act, essentially.
Okay.
And we had a special invite list of people that came, and it was fantastic. We actually had this
Oh,
gentleman named Colin Hampton, he was John and Paul and George's first drummer. He came to the concert in the backyard.
really?
And so I have actually met,
Very cool.
he's been to the house 3 times. I've invited him.
Oh,
And so actually, I'll show you this for a little prop. These drumsticks here. So
yeah.
these drumsticks, they're newer drumsticks,
Yeah.
but one of the times that I had Colin Hanton, the original drummer, over
Yeah.
back about a year and a half ago, he used these these drumsticks, played the drums. I had a drum set up, a drum kit just for Colin
Yeah.
at the house, inside the house.
Yeah.
And Colin used these sticks in
Really?
George's house on a drum set.
Wow.
And so then, I took the drumsticks because I think they're kind of
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Anyways, and I ended
Very
up
cool.
donating the drum kit to John Lennon's former high school, their
Okay.
music
Yeah.
department. So
Nice.
they have the drum
Very
set.
nice. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
So people are coming from all over the
all over.
world,
It's
right?
amazing.
Right.
I mean,
To
Argentina, South Korea, Australia, everywhere. A lot of Americans.
okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
And are most Beatles? I assume they're probably Beatles fans.
Oh yeah, they're
probably all of them.
yes, they're
Is
only
it-
staying there because
'cause
it's
it's-
George's old house.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's funny. It's, you'd assume that it's all, I'm 51. I think you're
Yeah.
51.
I am.
You'd assume that it's all older people, like, people that are my parents' age or your parents' age, people that grew up with the Beatles.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that is somewhat true, but not really. There's a
Okay.
lot of people that go there that are, 50, 40, 30. I mean, it's not just 70-year-olds.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So you do get some younger.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder how many young people
Yeah.
know the Beatles.
Oh,
Like
they all
they-
know. If you ask
If-
someone in high school right now, I think they know who the
They-
Beatles are.
yeah. Yeah.
They may not.
Okay.
They may not love them, but
Right.
they know
But
who
they
they
do
are.
know who they are.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I haven't really asked any
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
I haven't even asked my own kids who are
Ask
in
your
their
daughter.
20s. I
Right,
know
right, right,
if they
right.
know the
Yeah.
Beatles. I haven't really thought to ask them.
Right.
Because I should. So that is exciting. Do you ever think like it's just such an odd? I mean, you're here. You've got this. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
It is.
really bizarre.
It is.
have
It
this
is.
connection.
It is bizarre. And so
I mean,
I've told this story so many times that it's
Yeah.
kind of funny. But so I assume that, like, most people that I know, they know of this whole situation.
Yeah.
Like, they know that I own
Yeah,
George's
yeah.
house, but I still meet many people that don't know.
that don't.
And so then, like, it's funny that first time I have to have this, or I have this conversation with people, and then they're like, what? And like, it's like this crazy thing.
Yeah,
I'm like,
right.
yep, and then,
Yeah.
yeah, right. And we go through this
Yeah.
whole thing, and they're like,
Yeah.
why? And what are
Yeah.
you doing? And so it is I do relive it over and over again, kind
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
and it
yeah.
is funny. But no, like 5 years ago, I wouldn't have anticipated me in this scenario.
Mhm.
But I kind of, and yeah, my wife and others would attest to this. I'm a little, I'll end up doing some things that are a little odd sometimes, and this was definitely one of them.
Mm.
But in a fun way.
Yeah.
This is, and again, it's worked out pretty well so far. So, but I
Mm.
think, it's fun to have some kind of hobby that
Mm.
that is, something fun.
Mhm,
And,
mhm.
everyone goes to work every day and does this and,
Mm.
slogs through whatever, and
Right.
that's fine. But,
yeah.
so it's funny that all this stuff has nothing to do with my real life and my real job. So it's kind of
Yeah.
have to put on a different hat.
Yeah. 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 But you've always been a Beatles
Yeah.
fan, so this
Yeah. Yeah, it
obviously
certainly
made
worked
sense
out with
for you
that,
to-
and it did. And I have a
Did-
friend of mine named Steve who he's a minority owner of the house, and so he's an old friend of mine from college,
Okay.
and he actually taught me a little bit how to play guitar. And anyways, so he's been like my person that I can kind of little feedback here and there.
Mm.
It's kind of mostly I've kind of handled a lot of the stuff, but if I need a gut check, it's
Mhm.
good to be able to pick up the phone and say, what do you think about this? Or I don't know,
Mhm.
and he's a big music fan also and a big Beatles fan also. So it's good to
Hmm.
have something like that.
What's been some of the feedback you've received from the guests who have come and stayed, and what's been some, the reaction? I mean, I
Yeah,
assume it's pretty
it
exciting for
is
them. I mean, they
exciting.
probably
It's
never thought they would be able to sit in
yeah,
his home.
yeah. I mean, it's exciting. The reviews that we get. Um, the reviews that we get are great. And
Yeah,
if you go on the Airbnb site, you can see the reviews. And we
yeah,
just got one just a couple of days ago that was like really, I mean, some of them are like, you blush almost like how good the
really.
reviews are. I mean,
Yeah,
people, some people say that, it's like a life-changing experience, like
really.
being there. And people,
Yeah,
if you fly to Liverpool and you're a big Beatles fan, if you're flying to Liverpool,
yeah.
basically, or you're like LFC, the football, the
Hmm.
soccer club, right? But anyways, if you're going there for the Beatles and then also you're staying at George Harrison's house and you know that the Beatles used to rehearse there,
Mm,
there's, I mean, it's hard to put that in words for people.
yeah.
And so people like can't put it in words.
Mm,
Many people have gone there and, they cry, and they
really.
can't handle it.
Huh.
Um, so it's not everyone
Mm.
obviously, but it
Yeah, I
is a
mean, it's
big
pretty.
deal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's cool. It's similar, in kind of a weird way. I'm an Elvis fan also. I do
Oh,
like
yeah.
the old kind of old school rock and roll, the original kind of
Mm,
stuff. And I've been to Graceland way back a long time ago. And, there's so many people that go through these tours of Graceland, right? And it's like a way of connecting
mm,
with all these people. They love Elvis or they love the Beatles or whatever. Like there's a way to connect there, and like going through their home, you're like it sort of humanizes them a
mm,
bit. Like people put George Harrison or John Lennon or whatever on a pedestal, or Elvis or whatever,
yeah.
and well, yeah, maybe they are super talented and all
Mm,
this, but they're just people. And
mm,
George Harrison would be the first to say probably that he's nothing special. And
mm,
that was kind of the humility of George is something that
mm.
I like. That I don't know if he would love everyone going through his old house, but that's another subject.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Oh. And what was the time frame again that he lived there?
he
What
lived there from
or up until
6 years old up to 19 years old.
Oh, okay.
So he was a Beatle there
So, okay.
because he became a Beatle when he was 17.
Mhm,
That
mhm.
was when the name changed.
Okay.
And so the Beatles' first song that they released was Love Me Do.
Mm,
And so Love Me Do, they released that song and it went on the charts and did
mm.
pretty well. That was when George was in that house
Okay.
it's called Upton Green and
Yeah,
Speak in
yeah.
Liverpool. And so George heard the Beatles, heard himself on the radio in that house
Oh,
for the
wow.
first time. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. And yeah, he ended up moving out shortly after that.
Okay. So he moved
The
in
family did.
as a when he was young,
Yeah,
and then
yeah, they
obviously
didn't move out
continued
until he was
was
about
there until he
20.
was okay.
Yeah.
Did you have to do a lot of research
I
to
did.
about the house
Yeah.
and to be able to
Oh, yeah.
offer some of these
Oh,
facts
yeah.
about the
No,
house to
we have a book in the house that's like a black binder kind of thing. We have all these anecdotes or,
okay.
historical facts and trivia
Yeah.
about all this stuff and some old stories. Some of them are well known in the rock community or Beatles
Yeah.
community. Some of them are not well known.
Mm,
And those are the ones I kind of had to dig up. And I
mm,
kind of like the research end of it and
mm.
like talking to old neighbors that
Yeah.
remember the Harrisons. I've
Wow.
talked to people that were next door neighbors and remember George. I remember John coming over
Really?
and saying hi to the
That's
kids and like
crazy.
so
That's
like
just
yeah,
crazy.
yeah, so it's
Wow.
crazy.
Wow.
It's just a little residential. It's a cul-de-sac basically.
Mhm. Are there any still around there
No, no,
that would have
not anymore. But
okay.
there are some that I've spoken to and met. One of George's good friends is the same age as George, so again, 83 years old. He moved away from Liverpool, but I met him. I invited him to a special party we were having. He came by. The guy's name is Jeff. He was good buddies with George. They used to play guitar together at Upton Green.
Yeah.
They used to play old Chuck Berry songs and whatever, the whole thing. And they used to go on bike rides together and all this. I had him in the house. I was like having a beer with him and
Mm,
like talking to him. He was just talking about the old days and like, that George playing at the Cavern Club and like, just
mm,
like it was nothing,
mm. Wow.
which is really cool.
Yeah, yeah.
When I first bought the house, I tell everyone this, half of the reason why I bought the George house was so that I could open it up to fans so people could go there
Mm.
and see it and
Right,
experience
right.
it and whatever, take pictures and selfies and all that. And that's all happened, which is
Yeah,
great.
yeah,
And then the other half of the reason was I wanted to go in there and I wanted to play the guitar in George Harrison's house
yeah.
just by myself with no one else there. which I did the first day that I
I was
owned
gonna
the
say that
house.
must
I got the keys.
yeah.
So I got the keys and I had to go and buy a guitar. I didn't have a car. So I had to go, Uber over to a music store in Liverpool, buy a guitar and a guitar case,
Yeah.
Uber back or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I had no furniture, nothing to sit on. So usually, and I didn't have a strap I forgot to buy a strap for the guitar.
Jeez.
So it's very hard to play the guitar without a strap if you're standing up.
Yeah.
So I had to sit down. But I didn't think of any of this. So I'm flying back tomorrow. I got to figure this out. So I didn't have so I walked down to a grocery store and bought a plastic garbage pail, a bucket, basically. So the garbage pail I carried back to the house and I turned it upside down and sat on a plastic garbage bin in the living room of George's house and played the new guitar and played, While My Guitar Gently Weeps and a couple other songs. And that was, like I said, that was a pretty intense time, whatever. And that was very cool. But that was really a cool thing. And that's when people go there and they're able to like strum the guitar, even if you don't play the guitar, if you go there and you sit in this room that Paul McCartney was in there and they're all playing guitar and you strum the guitar, people love that, even if they can't play the guitar, and that's why I have the guitars there. So anyways, it's been fun.
So legendary drummer Alvin Taylor.
Yes.
So explain how you ended up connecting with him, because it was through the
George house.
The George house. So explain how that happened.
Exactly. So this is funny. Little cameo plug here for Alvin Taylor, the book that Alvin and I wrote called Drum Major to Major Drummer.
Yeah.
But so Alvin, and this came out about a year and a half ago. Okay. So on my Facebook page, or the George Harrison Liverpool Home Facebook page, which I run, manage it or whatever. Okay. So, I post every couple days or, whatever, something, or, so it's pretty active. There's quite a lot of followers on it now. I never was big into social media, but because of this house and now because of this book, now I am big into social media, but
it's a whole other world.
It's a whole other world, right? So a couple of the posts, this guy named Alvin Taylor was responding or commenting on the posts on Facebook. And he would say something like, oh, I remember, playing with George at George's castle in outside London, and it was so great. And George was a great guy and a great musician, whatever. I'm like, who is this guy? And I'm like, because it's not a name that it's not a famous name, whatever. And so I'm like, and then I started looking at it. He commented a couple of times. I'm like, there's a lot of weirdos out there. So I'm like, this guy, like a lot of people want to say that they have some affiliation with one of the Beatles, but a lot of them don't.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I was skeptical.
Right.
So anyways, I looked into it and I'm like, this guy is for real. So Alvin Taylor was the drummer for George Harrison in the mid 70s on one of George's, solo albums. So the Beatles broke up in 1970, and then obviously they all did their own thing, right? And one of George's solo albums called 33 and a Third, Alvin Taylor was a super popular drummer back in the 70s, especially in the 80s. And George handpicked him and brought him over to his castle, and they recorded that whole album in George's castle. And Alvin lived there with him and his new girlfriend for like 3 weeks. And it was just amazing. And so I got to know Alvin a little bit through that. And then I ended up doing one of these podcasts. I was the host and I interviewed Alvin. Okay. And we did that for the George page, the house page. And then Alvin and I just started to talk here and there. And he's such a good guy. And he lives in Palm Springs, California. Nice guy. And I'll get into the book in a second, but it's funny. We're talking about New Hampshire. A little trivia fact. So we're like, well, how did the book come about? Right. So every time I talked to Alvin, he would just offhand just say some insane story about like his career and like all the name drops. And it's amazing. it's for someone like me that loves that like 60s music and 70s music too, and 50s, whatever. I was just like blown away. Like, this is crazy. And no one knows, a lot of people don't know who he is. And I'm like, so anyways, I was going to the gym in Stratham at Planet Fitness. Okay, and so I'm pulling out of there and Alvin calls me. This is just like 2 years ago or so. And we would talk like once a month or so, we were kind of becoming friends and friendly, whatever. And so, which was cool in itself. Right. Yeah. And so anyways, so this is a weird coincidence. Right. Like so then I'm driving on Route 101 coming home here to Hampton. And so and then on the phone, he just drops some other insane story about him recording with Sly and the Family Stone and like, or playing in Hawaii with Ike Turner and like all these crazy things.
Mm.
I'm like, this is insane. I'm like,
Yeah.
Alvin, do you ever think about writing a book
Yeah.
about your life, about your, your memoirs,
Mhm.
basically? He's like, well, yeah, I thought about it. I actually kind of
Mhm.
started it a little while ago, but then it's too hard and I can't do it all. And, and I'm like, I think you need to do it.
Mhm.
Like, people need to hear, like, you're telling
Yeah.
me these stories, which is
Yeah.
cool, but I'm
Yeah.
like, these are great
Right.
stories.
Right.
People need
Right.
to hear these
Yeah.
stories.
Yeah.
And so then he's just like, he's like, I don't know. And I'm like, I'll tell you what, if I help you do it, will you do it?
Mm.
And he's like, he thought about it. He's like, okay. So basically then I got myself wrapped up into this whole thing that him and I were co-authors of the book, called Drum Major to Major Drummer. And I mean, it was so fun.
Mm.
I've done some writing in the past, a little bit for some one book and some professional articles that I've written for a couple of
Mm.
magazines. So I knew how to write
So you
it or
had
put it
some writing
together. Yes, I
experience,
had some
but
writing experience, but this was
this is
kind of
different.
this was different.
Yeah.
But this was actually fun.
But yeah. Yeah.
You
It
know,
sounds more fun
but
than
but
writing.
just let me just go through some of the. I'm not going to read out of this. I just want to read some of the table of contents. Just some of the people that Alvin
Yeah.
has worked with, has recorded with, and or performed on stage with.
Yeah.
So these, and we have chapters about all these people.
Yeah.
Little Richard, Eric Burden from the Animals and War, Stevie Wonder and Ray Parker Jr., Ike and Tina Turner,
Wow.
Billy Preston, the fifth Beatle,
Yeah.
George Harrison, Bill Withers, Leo Sayer, Bob Welch from Fleetwood Mac, Bob Dylan, Elton John, Natalie Cole, Ronnie Wood, Cher.
Wow.
It's insane. And then there's more than this, because we actually did a
Crazy.
bonus chapter of stuff that didn't fit into here.
Oh, really?
So
Wow.
about a year ago, we did a bonus chapter, and he talks about Sly and the Family Stone. He talks about Diana Ross, of him doing stuff with those, a few other people like that.
Mhm.
And it's stuff that didn't even make it into this book.
Wow.
It's just crazy.
That is yeah, it's amazing. And out of all those names that came to
Yeah.
who a young person today. Well, Cher would the name Cher would
Yeah.
would stand
Right.
out to a younger person
Yeah,
today
yeah.
than maybe many of the others, but
Yeah.
still that's really
So I mean,
really cool.
when you look at it, like, and there's so much connections with the old days, like Little Richard.
Mm.
The Beatles loved Little Richard. They were Little Richard influenced the Beatles in a big way early on. And so that's kind of interesting, that Alvin got discovered by Little Richard. And Alvin worked with Little Richard for many years.
Really?
And he played in Vegas with them, played in all over the world with Little Richard. And anyways,
now there's a cool story that you had shared with me earlier about the Elton John incident. Can you talk about the Elton John incident, which is really funny?
So that's funny. So So I mean, I think everyone, even younger folks, know who Elton John
Elton
is.
John, yes.
Well,
yes,
right.
Elton
So
John,
Elton John,
Cher,
very famous. Right. So this is in like 1980.
Yeah.
About 1980. Again, Alvin was in very high demand for a studio musician and that kind of stuff, and even to go on tour. And so through some connection, he got this gig. Elton John was going to be recording a new album in, is it Nice or Nice, France? How do you pronounce it? I don't know. Might be Nice.
I'm not. I think Nice. I think Nice.
Yeah, but again, that's sorry. That's my bad.
Mine too.
Yeah. So, anyways, over in France, Elton John. I don't know if he owned the house. He probably did, because by that point he had tons of money, and he had a home studio there. And a lot of these stars, like George Harrison, even other Paul McCartney, they don't want to go to some studio and rent space. They build their own studio. And so anyways, Elton John did also, I believe. And so he goes over, so they fly him all over there. And so Alvin was a very stylish guy, and he still is. But Alvin had a brand new, tailored, custom made white 3-piece suit made. He was, again, think 1980, it's a little different style and vibe, whatever. And he's looking all cool and, dapper or whatever. So he goes over there, and so he gets picked up at the airport, whatever. Elton John sees him at the house, limo brings, everything's limos, right? Limo brings him over with all these other people, all these other musicians. So then Elton John says, hey, Alvin, it's great to meet you. He had never met him before. That was the first time they met. So he shakes his hand. It's like, oh, I'm so glad you're here. I'm so excited to work with you. And, I really wanted you on my album. So then he's like, hey, you're from Palm Springs, right? And Alvin's like, yeah. He's like, oh, so you've seen a lot of cool pools, because Palm Springs is a lot of that ritzy stuff.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, let me show you this pool. We got a great indoor pool here. So Elton John brings Alvin over to look at the pool, and it was, a nice pool. And Elton goes, just stick your hand in the pool. See how warm that water is. It's fabulous. So Alvin goes over, kind of leans over, puts his hand in the pool, and then Elton John just shoves him and throws him, pushes him into the pool, into the deep end. And with his whole, he's got everything. Alvin has his three-piece suit. He just paid big bucks for, right? He's got his passport. He's got his wallet. He's got cash. He's got everything in his pockets. So he's all in the pool. And in the book, we talk about it. Again, Alvin never met Elton before.
Yeah.
And so Alvin, he's literally getting out of the pool. He's like, what is happening to me? He's like, is Elton John trying to murder me? What is going on? And then he's like, I got my passport. I got all this stuff. He's like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And that was the first thing. And then he gets up and Elton John is just laughing and laughing and laughing. Like it was, it's a big practical joke.
Right.
So I guess what Alvin learned that Elton John was a big practical joker.
Jokester.
And a kind of a cool sense of humor, basically.
And he probably felt he couldn't be mad at. I suppose he wasn't mad at him. He just did Alvin laugh along with him? Or
I think Alvin laughed later.
Yeah.
He probably didn't laugh right that moment. He was like, what the hell? So yeah. And this is like one of the biggest superstars in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's funny when I interviewed Alvin about all these people.
Yeah.
And the one thing that comes across is when you're a professional, like he was, he's working with Bob Dylan. He's working with George Harrison. Like these are like people like up here, like in the entertainment world, right? Or music world or whatever. But you can't look at them like that when you're their drummer or you're the guitarist. Like you have to get your job done. And you have to, be proficient and, and all then follow direction and all this stuff. You can't be like, oh my God, I'm working with Elton John. That can't be like your mentality. Cause then you're kind of toast.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny. Like I think of me, like, if Elton John wanted me to do something and like, I'd be like, oh my God, Elton John.
Right.
But like Alvin's like, you can't be like that.
Yeah. Right. And how old is he now?
Alvin is 72.
So he's okay.
So he's a bit younger he's about 10 years younger than like George or those kind of folks.
And so people are interested in the book. Where can they find it?
So the book is on Amazon, paperback.
There you go.
There you go.
There we go. You get a good look at the book.
With a forward written by Leo Sayer.
Okay.
Some of you will know Leo, star in the 70s and stuff. But anyways, so books on Amazon, paperback and Kindle, the ebook thing. And also we're going to be coming up with an audiobook version of this very, very soon in the next week, probably. It'll be out there.
Great. Well, Ken, thank you so much for sitting down, sharing your story. And until next time, remember, every person and every place has a story to tell. We'll see you soon. Thanks for tuning in to Grounded in Granite, where we celebrate the people, places, and stories that make New Hampshire home. If you've enjoyed today's episode, make sure to follow Grounded in Granite on Facebook, X, TikTok, and Instagram for behind-the-scenes clips, photos, and more. Subscribe to the Grounded in Granite YouTube channel to catch full video episodes. You can also find Grounded in Granite on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and iHeart. Until next time, stay curious, stay connected, and stay grounded in granite.